We're talking with some of the members of the world famous group, the John Barry Seven. Now, before the break, we heard Starfire. Now, I read that although the clavier line was the main featured instrument, a reviewer of the tune stated, and I quote, Vic Flick was the unsung hero of the track and, perhaps, the entire John Barry Seven. What can you recall of the recording, Vic?
Starfire. Actually, I can't really remember much about that. Well, I can't remember anything about it because at that particular time when that was recorded, we used to go in and do about 3 or 4 titles, and sometimes didn't even have a title on the music. But so I really can't tell you anything about Starfire, except I like some of Jerry Lordan's tunes, which he wrote a lot, of course, for the Shadows. But and also thank you very much for the unsung hero. Well, what can I say? Do your very best, Mike, to reverse the situation.
I'm trying, Vic. Very trying. Well, if you can't recall the detail of Starfire, how easy was it to get your composition Zapata onto the String Beat album?
As regarding getting numbers recorded by the John Barry Seven, apart from written by John Barry, it was difficult. I had Zapata, as you mentioned, because he called up one day and said, hey, listen, I'm really my back's to the wall here. I've got this score to write and I've got this to do and that to do. And can you write a tune for this String Beat album? And I believe he'd already asked Les Reed to do one. So we did one each, and that's how we came to do Zapata. But I was very pleased to know that Brian Bennett's son Warren, he actually recorded and did a great job of Zapata, and it's on one of his EPs, Warren Bennett. So yeah, it's good.
And here is part of that track. It has a very quiet opening and has your distinctive sound, Vic. Zapata, composed by Vic Flick. Now here's almost a standard, given the special treatment of the John Barry Seven and featuring the jazz piano of Les Reed. Street Rag. Quite an old tune, I believe, Les.
12th Street Rag, yes, I remember that very well. Pee Wee Hunt recorded this piece in, I think it was 1948 to my chagrin, and I remember it very well still. He remained at the top of the American charts for the longest period ever, I think, with that record. And in the 1950s, Winifred Atwell also had a massive hit with her piano rendition of this song. So I knew the piece very, very well. It was more a commercial jazz tune, Dixie style, as opposed to the real jazz style. But considering that the Dixieland sound from Jimmy Dorsey fused my enthusiasm for big bands when I was just a boy, it was a pleasure to feature my 10 little fingers on the JB7 recording of the 12th Street Rag, along with my old mate, of course, Vic Flick, who played a terrific guitar riff on the recording.
How about some of the other favourites, Dougie, like the theme from A Matter of Who?
Well, A Matter of Who was the John Barry film, written by John Barry, the music. We were the session guys on the soundtrack, and it was a very interesting way of earning some money again. In the film studios rather than recording sound studios. I enjoyed all the stuff I did. I must admit that's why I became a professional musician. But the thing is, some of the tracks that stand out, one in particular, one of the very early tracks we recorded, late 58 I think it was Long John by the Seven. And that was a kind of really down-to-earth rock and roll kind of foot tapper. And I enjoyed doing that because it featured yours truly. But it was a good track, and very enjoyable to do. Of course, I was knocking 7 bells out the kit with sticks on that one.
And we'll conclude the interview with the members of the John Barry 7 in just a few moments. In this final part of our interview with 4 members of the John Barry 7, I'll be asking how they saw the group. Firstly, back to you, Les. What thoughts do you have of those early days of the John Barry 7?
Oh, those early days were no doubt, or at least was, my entree into the pop business. Certainly, my audition with the JB7 was for me a bit of a culture shock, really, as my piano parts were so simple and basic. Having said that, though, when the band came together musically, the sound was great, distinctive, and incredibly commercial. This is what the record-buying public wanted, and I soon became enamoured with the John Barry 7 sound. All of the guys were good and solid musicians, and their passion came through loud and clear. Their love of popular music was inherent in each and every one of them. I had and still have much affection for all those other 6 guys that made up the John Barry 7. I love them. They are still in touch, and quite often I get nice calls from America, from Vic, and from Lancashire, which is Dougie. And recently I've heard from Jimmy Stead, so it's all coming back. Maybe a John Barry revival one day. Who knows?
Hey Les, what a brilliant idea. Could be done too with your composing and sending the music by email to the others. Meanwhile, how did you see the group, Jimmy, as I found that the total sound almost more than the individual constituent parts, giving something special to the overall sound?
I think you have described the group as I would have. We were all young, experienced musicians who had played with different bands before joining the 7, enabling us to work together, as well as backing numerous artists. Our sound soon became popular on records, TV, stage and film, and I think all of us enjoyed our time with the John Barry 7.
Thanks, Jimmy. How did you see the group, Vic?
How did I see the group? It's quite a philosophical question, Mike. At the time, it was just kind of an instrumental group, banging out a few songs and a few tunes and getting the people up and dancing and a few hit records. I didn't see it as any great momentous moment in musical history, but it certainly was innovative in as much as that the guitar, the relationship between the guitar and the other frontline instruments was quite sort of interesting, and that made a change. And of course, then John Barry himself decided to bring in like strings and the +4 business. That made it even more interesting and changing. And then he used the John Barry 7 to back artists like Adam Faith and Johnny DeLittle and people like that, if you can remember who that is. There's a little Scotsman that we did work for, and he was quite successful. Evie Taylor prodigies and people like that. But it was a turning point, and as much as that we could do a lot on television. We worked on television shows and accompanying people. We did some important tours. And I think that it was perhaps not quite as, but just as important as the Shadows and other groups of that ilk. But I don't see it as a great sort of a mood changer, game changer, except that it was a good group, very musicianly, and very professional. And I was proud, and still am proud, to be part of it, and proud of the music that we produced.
Well, regrettably, that's just about all we've got time for, but just enough time left to say thank you to you all. So firstly, thank you, Dougie, for all your inputs.
It's been nice talking to you, Mike, and thank you very, very much for everything. Bye for now.
Thanks also to saxophonist Jimmy Stead.
Well, Mike, I'm no stranger to your country, as my wife and I have visited Australia every other year since 2005-06, and we love it. Being on your programme has added to that enjoyment, and I thank you for the opportunity of being with your listeners.
Thanks also to the John Barry pianist and composer, Les Reed.
Mike, it's been my pleasure, and I send my love, best wishes to everybody in Australia. Thank you.
And last but not least, the well-known guitarist Vic Flick. Thanks, Vic.
Thanks ever so much for the chance to talk with you and to talk with your listeners. And I hope everything goes well with you in Australia. And I'll be thinking of you here in my home, Las Vegas, Nevada, US of A. So thank you and God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, the great personalities and the fabulous music of the John Barry 7, a group that brings back so many happy memories for me, and you too, I hope, with sincere thanks to all for their contribution. The Magnificent 7.